Okay, I'll call this November 24th work session over. So joining me for moment of silence and pledge. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Yeah, I think maybe Susan's comments tonight. Okay. Move on to our first discussion item, the Lakeville Fire Relief Benefit State Aid Proposal, and we'll turn it over to our chief.
I'm going to pass it off to Dan Long and reach folks as far as this is kind of their being memo.
Okay.
Also, we have Brian Monahan and Eric Smooth are all members of the relief boards.
Welcome to Melvin. Good to see you.
Yeah, thanks, Paul. Thanks, everyone, for again allowing us to participate in the discussion around the future of our most valuable recruiting and retention tool, which is our defined benefit plan for Lakeville Fire. Really, this conversation was one that we as a board expected. We just didn't know exactly when we were going to come around to this conversation, but we have City Administrator Miller to thank for motivating us to get serious and start doing our homework about what the potential really is for the state aid funds and how we can really maximize the utility of those. Not only continue to help our paid on call firefighters, but also help the city and help our brothers and sisters that answered the full-time call to service here in the past couple of years. So I'm not sure how much time everybody's been able to spend with the memo, but I'm happy to provide a high-level overview if that would be helpful, and really just try to answer any questions that you may have. Please do. Okay. So, generally speaking, we receive a certain allocation of funds on an annual basis. Actually, we just received our funds here in the past month from the state to fund our pension benefits in Lakeville. This year it was roughly $800,000 that we received. And that allocation is determined not necessarily by membership within the fire department itself, but the growth of the city. It's demographically based. So we have thankfully experienced another really great year of fund performance from an investment perspective. So we found ourselves bumping into the same dilemma that we had a few years ago when we approached you about changing investments to get the benefit level, which is like overfunding what to have. But in this case, I started with, all right, well, what does the math say? How can we actually entertain a proposal where there is a revenue sharing type of option on the table for us to allocate a certain percentage of our overall state aid to the full-time firefighters. And thankfully, after working with Clifton Larson Allen, our third-party audit partner, the math came back really favorably, and it suggests that we can do a lot with these funds. Our proposal outlines the next 2 years being a revenue share of roughly 9% of our state aid allocation, which would cover a good portion of the amount that the city is paying for right now that isn't picked up by the SAFER grant. Accurate. Right. And then once that grant runs its course, which is at the end of 2027, we outline a much more substantial contribution of 30% of the state aid to help subsidize those funds that the grant will not be there to cover. Thankfully, all of those projections, or the projections that ran, show that we can do this, and the fund will stay well above that 110% funding level that we committed to with the city. And we really do see this as a win-win-win for everybody. And really, something that provides a path for the next 3 years where we're not having to have this conversation year over year with you, but at least gets us through end of 2028. The ask from the paid on call membership and our board would be that with this proposal, we trim our vesting schedule to be reflective of what we're seeing with most of our neighboring cities, and that is to trim it to a 10-year vest for 100% vesting. And then also 2 incremental increases over the next 2 years to the benefit level itself, getting us up to the current state maximum, which is $20,000 per year of service as a benefit level. Question?
So the last conversation we had, we talked about kind of moving to the totally different system.
Correct. The defined contribution.
Yep.
Yep.
And it just doesn't make less sense now the state changed.
That was what motivated this 180. Just in terms of, there are certain aspects of the defined contribution that are more attractive, like being able to invest your funds before the age of 50. But really, the math here supports this being a better option for the defined benefit plan at 20,000, being a better option for firefighters today. So we may pick up that exercise again in the future, but today this is it.
Councilor, question? Right. I'm comfortable with this. I mean, we've had some good conversations for the last several years. Next in the state area. I am hopeful that this should help improve you in our call. When you're 26 and you think about a 20-year commitment versus 10-year commitment, big deal. So hopefully you guys strengthen some of the call.
Also motivate a lot of our tenured firefighters to stay on.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah, I hate to see them drop off at the 16, 17, 18, 20, seems like all right. Yeah.
I was just gonna say, I agree, and I think it's gonna help with improvement, and I appreciate it. Look forward to it as a safer grant. Just to make sure, the thought that you folks are gonna do this. So,
Yeah, so it sounds like we have consensus then. Next council meeting, we have a motion for 10-year vesting.
As well as the phasing in of this state area.
Yeah.
I think it is important to note, though, that this also goes to the membership vote, which is happening at the December 1st meeting, which is next Monday, correct?
Right, yep.
So,
We wouldn't vote on it until
maybe this same day. Right?
We can do it either way. I mean, I'll talk with Mike about how we want to do it. I mean, we can either do it contingent upon them approval, or we can wait till they do it on the 1st and we approve it on the 15th. I'll just talk with Mike about
that was really.
the process, how we do that.
And I only mention that because there was an info meeting that took place last week, and the members that did show up were favorable to this as well. And a small chance that vote doesn't go this way, then there would be future conversations that need to be had. But I have a feeling that the membership have a strong support for this too.
I agree. Usually those in attendance at the Q&As like that are the squeakiest wheels. Skeptical. So we left there feeling really good about everybody's support. So I would expect good call.
Thank you guys for your continued service to the community.
Yeah, I should
Oh,
note,
sorry.
no, echo everything. Thank you for doing it. I should note that the 9%, which I forget what they broke out to, was like 60 or 80,000. Yeah. We have factored that into the budget for next year. So part of the projection is in the levy next year reflects the assumption that that was going to happen. So,
Yeah, it was our hope that we get this stuff locked in so that we can start projecting the next 2026 budget.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
All right. Turn over to, our police chief, Brad Paulson, to talk about, deployment of statewide license plate.
If you join, no, you'll have to join
The teams.
the teams.
Okay.
call. Yeah.
So, Lieutenant Hanson has a few slides to put up on the screen, and he'll kind of walk us through the presentation here, but to tee it up just a little bit, we're here tonight to discuss license plate reader technology, cameras. We did have a conversation with Public Safety Committee, maybe 6 weeks ago or so. But all involved thought a council work session discussion would be a good thing to have. So, we're here to try to educate on what OPR technology is, answering questions that may be out there, what our plans are for potential deployment and what that could look like. We're always looking at ways to innovate as a police department. It's in our mission statement to do so. So finding ways to enhance public safety, always look at entertaining new technology, but also balancing that with certain privacy concerns with many types of technology. We've been through that before with body-worn camera footage, drone technology, other types of cameras, and it's no different here with LPR technology. There's always a public privacy concern. How do we balance both, right? If we were just 100% in on technology and disregarding the privacy aspect, that's pretty reckless. If we were on the other side of all we cared about was privacy, but never wanted to innovate, that's also pretty reckless. So how do we find the middle ground of making our community and public safer, but balancing those concerns of the public privacy? And we really think we found some middle ground here with the LPR technology. There are a lot of, as of here, guardrails that are baked in place here in Minnesota through state statute, through policy, through public facing dashboards. We've worked really hard in our community to establish a level of trust with our community, with the technology and equipment we do use. We're pretty out front and transparent about what's out there. And a big piece of that is so when we do have new things, there's that level of trust already in place that we can move forward with new pieces of equipment. So I think the biggest things are tonight is to show what this is and how we plan to use it, and then obviously answer any questions that we can bring out there.
I just had it. Didn't bring it up.
I will say you'll see and hear a little bit some of the neighboring communities that are using this technology. That is important, but I think it's also important to note that just because other people are doing it doesn't automatically need or mean that we need to do it. I think we always look at each community, each agency, their specific needs. So balancing what we feel like our community needs and our agency prioritizes. And we do feel like this is something that is certainly beneficial, specific to Lakeville and specific to Lakeville PD, not just because other people are using it.
The state statute require a public hearing like they did for the, not subject.
And I can just jump in here when it comes up, we can go to the third slide, but just to pick up after Chief Paulson, kind of the background of why this idea came to the forefront is over the last, so many years, 5 years or so, we've seen an increase in regional crimes involving stolen vehicles, catalog converter thefts, and just organized groups of criminals that come to Lakeville or any other suburban community and commit crimes in mass. LPRs have demonstrated a great success through a lot of other metro agencies that have deployed these in and not only solving the crimes, but also preventing them. Criminals see these devices, they're not getting, some nearby agencies that have them deployed right now and have success stories are Prior Lake, Egan, Savage, Shakopee, and Dakota County. Several others in our area are working through the process of deploying them as well. They've been so successful, and it actually, the LPR technology actually started at the residential level in homeowners associations. But private businesses have picked them up and now are putting them on their private property to help mitigate retail theft, damaged property, things like that. One of the features of these is they provide real-time alerts to officers that are on patrol working. They provide investigative leads to detectives that are in the office working on crimes that have already been committed. And it just helps us round us out in regional data sharing with other agencies. You want to jump to the next slide? So some of the features of a citywide LPR system would be motion activated image captures. And you'll notice its image is intentional on there. It's not video capture. It's a singular image of the vehicle. It records the license plate, and you can think of the image that it captures as a vehicle fingerprint. So it looks for the license plate, it looks for the make, model, color, and then maybe a unique characteristic. So think of a blue pickup truck with a yellow bumper sticker. It will capture that. And the important thing with a digital or a vehicle fingerprint is we don't necessarily need the license plate of the suspect vehicle because criminals so often change the license plate. So we go steal a license plate of a like vehicle and change that regularly to the criminal activity. So if we have that fingerprint of the vehicle, we can zone in on, say, just red trucks in this time frame that have a yellow bumper sticker. That's the important feature of it. There's a 30-day retention policy. State statute says 60 days. We would, our policy would say 30 days. There's no real-time vehicle tracking with the LPR systems. There's no facial recognition technology in any of the cameras. Strict data access controls that would be in place for anybody that wants to access Lakeville's data. And we would have full audit logs of every user that does access the data. That would include a reason why they access the data and so on and so forth. And this is nothing new to our officers because similar things are in place for our body-worn cameras. So there's got to be a reason why you're looking at the footage. It's heavily tracked right down to the IP address. You want to jump to the next slide? So this would be an example of what the camera would look like. We've been working with some vendors. Flock is one we kind of landed on as the one we really liked. It's on just a fiberglass pole. The camera's all ran by solar, so there's no wiring or anything like that. And with Flock, we wouldn't own any of the hardware. It's all leased, so if there's an issue with it, it belongs to Flock. And they would send engineers out to repair it. You want to jump to the next one? This is an example of, might have to make your screen bigger if you can. This is an example of the real-time alert. So think text message comes to your iPhone. It's very similar. It's just branded, in this case, with Flock. So it would give you, if we were able to zoom in, it gives you the license plate number of the vehicle, the make, or the kind. So in this case, the top one says amber alert, blue sedan, and then the location of wherever that Flock camera is that captured that. The next one down would be an example of if a car came into the city and it had a warrant, or the license plate was associated with a person that had a warrant. So it's a hot list kit. And the next one down is a saved search. And that's just a match on a blue Ford or black Ford Focus. And so a saved search is a hot list that would be unique just to Lakeville. So say we had a gas station that was robbed. And the only thing we knew that was a black Ford Focus, and we knew that it left in a certain direction. We can jump on Flock website and enter that into our hot list. And so that would be instantaneously uploaded for all of the Lakeville officers to be notified if a vehicle like that hits one of our Flock cameras. So it's kind of a unique, a kind of a good feature for that instantaneous getting eyes out there on the road for a crime that happened in a vehicle that we want to track down. The next slide will show us a kind of a draft image of what it would look like for Flock deploying LPR cameras in the city with a 20 camera deployment. And you'll notice the green dots are all cameras. And you'll notice there's heavy emphasis on ingress, egress to the city. And that's very intentional. There's no plans or ideas to put cameras in neighborhoods or anything like that. It would more focus on, think of creating like a digital gateway to the city. And this would give us an idea of criminal activity that was coming into or leaving the city. And commonly what we see is, for example, a stolen vehicle coming into the city at 3 a.m. And they generally, are coming into the city to commit crimes. Well, if we're notified of that, even if we don't have cameras in the center of the city, we know the vehicle's here. So we can get officers out into our hot areas to try to check for the vehicle. And inversely, we know if a vehicle leaves our city, say they stole a new vehicle and left the city. Well, that report might not come in until 7, 8, 9 o'clock the next morning. But we can query that vehicle in Flock and know approximately how much time it spent in our city and the fact that it left. And again, that's just a draft. You'll notice there's some gaps on the east side of the city. We would work this to do everything we could with 20 cameras. The next slide is more along the lines of a proposed deployment plan if this were supported. So 20 Flock cameras, like I mentioned before. We would focus on major access points along I-35, arterial roadways such as Kenwood Trip, County Road 46, Cedar Avenue, County Road 70, and 185th Street. If we had secondary or cameras extra, we would focus on, entrances to commercial corridors, like heavy retail area. We would also pay close attention to bordering agencies so that we can capitalize on, say Prior Lake to our west has cameras. So we can capitalize on that. If they have County Road 21 covered and we have 185th covered, we could, through process of elimination, tell if that vehicle was coming into Lakeville or traveled from Lakeville during its criminal activity. And again, the locations that were on that map before are just for you guys to consider. The next slide covers the cost of what this idea would cost, and the installation fee for 20 cameras would be $7,050 actually, which is a 50% savings if we were to act in 2025. Black Friday deal. Black Friday deal. I think they might give us even more. And then after they're installed, an annual service fee of $3,000 per camera. Again, if we went with Flock would own those cameras and charge us $3,000 to utilize their services. So the total first year cost would be $67,050 for 20 cameras, and then each subsequent year would be $60,000, assuming that we don't raise the price. So if we did that, a budget impact, we believe there would be no impact to the budget because we could pay for this using repurposed funds designated for other areas that hasn't been used yet in 25. That would give us 26 to use the system and budget for it the second year, actually in 27. The next slide is probably the most important one when it comes to concerns of a system like this, and that's privacy and oversight. And I'll start off by saying that much of the privacy concerns can be mitigated by good policy. And that's certainly our intentions if this were supported. But just to reiterate, on a privacy concern, there is no facial recognition on these cameras, and you can't search for people. So somebody might say, well, what if it captures somebody through the windshield of the car? Well, that could happen. But an officer can't go in and query, blue truck with a male driver wearing a blaze orange vest. It simply can't do that. So we can't search for people or a person with a beard or anything like that. The cameras capture vehicles only from public roadways, so they wouldn't capture any vehicles on private property. Our cameras would have a 30-day automatic deletion unless it's tied to an active investigation. So if it's a stolen vehicle that hit off a camera, that would just follow data retention laws that we already adhered to. And importantly, all data that we would collect with City of Lakeville cameras would belong to the City of Lakeville, and we would dictate who that data is shared with, if anybody. And I'll go into a public dashboard and we can talk a little more about that in a minute. But then, of course, the policy would be, or the cameras would be covered by not only department policy, but Minnesota state statute also has some limitations in there that we would adhere to as well. The next slide is just an example of what I thought was a pretty good policy, and that's the City of Woodbury's. You can Google it and read it. It's a 3-page policy, but it follows state statute. The only difference in theirs is they have a 60-day retention policy on their data, and ours would have 30, like I said. And then, Ellen, I don't know if you're able to click on the Edina PD one. And this is an example of the Edina PD's front-facing dashboard. It's just another step towards transparency in what the public can see. The public can log in and but I'll just keep talking, so when it does, you'll see it. So the public can log into what's a front-facing dashboard of Flock. And that would tell anybody who logged into it how long they retain their data. Edina's 30 days. The number of license plate reader cameras that are out there. If you look on the right side, you'll see the column that I'm referring to. And so this is real time right now. So there's 23 LPRs deployed in Edina. The organizations that they grant access to their cameras is Hawkins PD, Minnetonka PD, and St. Louis Park PD. So it's really important to have those mutual aid agreements with surrounding agencies. And the reason why it is because it takes just a little bit for, say I report my car stolen. For that to get into the system and be a statewide hot list takes a little bit of time. But if we have a robbery of a business, seconds count for that car leaving the city. So if it leaves the city and we're sharing data with Burnsville, they would be able to get those removed quickly. So you'll see how they share with the surrounding agencies. The hot lists that their officers are alerted to are National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, Amber Alerts, and then the Minnesota BCO files. So thinking warrants and things like that. And then if you look further down, the vehicles that they've detected in the last 30 days is 340,269. And of those, there were 5,506 hits. Now that might seem like a lot. It's just shy of 2%, but it's all of the warrants and things like that. So a lot of, there's obviously a lot of data and a lot of warrants out there that would be associated with vehicles. So doesn't necessarily mean an officer responded to all 5,500 hits, but they're there. The next one down is how many times has an Edina detective used Flock to query, search, or investigate crime? In this case, in the last 30 days, it's 154 times. And then if you go a step further down, and you can click on that hyperlink, that will actually download a spreadsheet and tell you, it gives you metadata that would identify the detective that used it, but then it'll tell you the reason why did they query that data. So stolen vehicle, robbery, whatever it may be. And so it's just a really good tool and is just a good transparency piece for the public.
Which cities would we do agreements with? The ones you mentioned earlier, Shakopee and Fire Lake and
Yeah, I think that would be open to discussion, but I think it would be really important to at least have mutual aid agreements with our bordering agencies so that we could capture those.
would we allow an agency to have access even though I not have LPMs?
So you can't, they wouldn't have access, but what they could do is call one of our detectives and ask them. In fact, Lakeville has done that 57 times this year for various crimes, and we have quite a few success stories that we've used other people's LPRs to track down our stolen vehicles or even homicide suspects. That Flock actually, another agency that had Flock helped us with. So go back to the PowerPoint, and the next slide is just how does this fit within Envision Lakeville? And we believe that it fits in two ways. In community values, specifically safety throughout the community in the form of proactive crime prevention, increased officer and community safety, citywide situational awareness, and neighborhood level protection without physical intrusion. And then also in the category of strategic priorities, we believe it checks the box of providing services that add value by delivering a high impact public safety service for a reasonable cost. It adds tangible, measurable value for residents. It supports the community's expectation of modern, effective services, and it reinforces Lakeville's commitment to being safe as a living. And the next slide just kind of goes over the next step. So if this were supported, we would obviously have to finalize our site mapping and obtain any infrastructure approvals or permits to install them, enter into an agreement, and our preference would be with Flock, and then hopefully get some cameras installed prior to the end of this year.
Are we able to move them? Let's say we deploy next year and kind of figure out, oh, that didn't make sense. We think we want more focus on this side of the city.
Yeah, they are movable. There's a small cost. I don't know what that is. It's hundreds of dollars if I remember correctly, but they are definitely movable. So just so you can electrical dysfunction that they deal with that.
Yeah, I guess I was thinking about like community. You know what I mean? Like,
There are some agencies that do that for community events. Flock actually makes a trailer. There would have, their trailers that helping our technology, real-time video for those.
What's the rationale of the 30 days instead of 60?
You know, a good question. We think that 30 days captures the information long enough for any crimes, any major crimes that maybe haven't been reported day one. We think it would be reported by day 30 and give that. Please query the system and identify the license. And it also gives us a big profit. We're not buying this.
Yeah, we looked at this with public safety, maybe a technology is at the point where this is just like a regional project. And it really helps us address our issues, but it also helps us be with our law enforcement agencies. I'm all for it. One question, so in the memo, you highlighted that some private businesses actually have these, and I see like there's like a big Dinah's list. There's a lot of shopliftings. Do you know if anybody in Lakeville, in terms of a private business, is using this?
We do have one.
Okay.
And then thank you for bringing that up, because I should highlight that any private business, state sharing, they say if a private business say had a flock, and you would wonder, well, if you're sharing data, would you share with a private business? It is a one-way split, so private businesses can choose to share with public safety, but it will never go the other way. Public safety will never share our action with private business.
At one point you had said something about there's no real-time tracking, but there's real-time. What's the difference?
So the difference would be when a vehicle crosses the camera, it would be notified the officer of stolen vehicle crossing the camera. What it doesn't do is there's no ability for, if we want to say, figure out if the vehicle is going south. Well, unless that vehicle is in a hot list, we wouldn't have no idea. So we don't know when a vehicle goes from camera to camera to camera, unless we do a query, which we need a lot of reason. There's no, it's not, there's no way for us to track the vehicle. We just know if it's
Very integration with like advanced camera systems, like regular internet. Makes that. And that's really traffic.
Not that I'm aware of, but I have not heard that they're using.
And it might be something you have to reach out to them, like right now, if the ads point out, you could like. I have dispatched. Probably the same thing. Yeah, you just gotta.
Yeah, wanted person.
Among the numerous things that are in a squad, this is gonna be probably a screen in the laptop, but practically speaking, what does this mean for an officer on the road? I mean, are there bells and?
Yeah, there could be a portal running in the background, and there would be an audible phone that would go off. But as you saw in that picture too, on each side. So they're in the office to be paperwork at 2:00 in the morning. They would also do it. Still the picture sections. Do some perceptions.
So it's an app installed on CEO devices that allows it.
Is there any action you can make for another one? We could have a share with the students.
I don't know of any agencies that use, to put a 911 dispatching in the area, so I don't think we'll receive any of these from, so can we get a quote from? And
It's going to be a question that's going to be for a little bit of the projects for everyone's advance. Does does it scan either plate, front or back?
it's primarily focused on the rear.
But the tangent, I think we have to stay, people not complying with the front plate requirement. So I'm sure that's not your problem, that's a state issue.
Well, I wonder if it's not.
Especially on Tesla, so it's just-
Some states don't require it.
Well, and if you buy the car online, some manufacturers don't provide it. It's up to the purchaser to put it on, like, got bells if they put it on. Roll your eyes, that's a very legitimate public safety point.
But what it makes me wonder though is, are there any state statutes on like altering license plates so it doesn't? They've seen like these sort of stickers and stuff.
Right.
So if we did see somebody with a sticker that are violating that, else in our.
So you can't have a standard license plate, bracket or anything like that. You also, anything you're doing to obscure that is already violated statute. Okay. All criminal, proactive efforts, try to, criminals know this technology is out there. That's why the vehicle footprint, not just the license plate, is important to capture, vehicle descriptions, certificates, all of it. The other piece we really highlighted the criminal aspect, that's a big piece of this, but we have had success in this witnessing. these days as well. It's not all tied to criminal activity, there's a big piece of, people in, the types of support that this technology itself.
I just want to applaud you on this because I do think it's innovative and, I know my company actually is piloting this in a number of, not in Lakeville, but in a number of locations too, because of the retail theft issue it's huge to have permission to share. So I think it's a great idea.
Well, from when we were speaking about this at the public safety meeting, I appreciate the emphasis on the corridors, the major corridor, just don't think our community is ready for. That are minor and real relative to the city quite yet. Not that we're actually going that direction, but really the crime, especially as lives on traffic areas, are coming in the interstate. So investigating things that are happening, catching those hot, hot list folks. So, I mean, we are the gateway for the Twin Cities, so a lot of stuff is coming through.
I have one more question. I forgot to ask. So there's the news right now. There's a lot of discussion of speed cameras, and I think sugar lights and Minneapolis.
That's Mendota.
Authorized understand. This has nothing to do with that. Record. All kinds of privacy and constitutional issues there. So.
Outside of that, if you don't catch something, and through maybe coming on, that'd be.
No, I know, but I mean,
Before.
when it is at 30 days,
Yes.
stored in the cloud.
Yes, within the.
Yeah, and if the big door clock is indicating standard detection. It's important to know things. Whether or not some of the guys who get behind the budget for them. To be an officer, they have to be basically.
Thanks for looking at this. I think this makes a ton of sense, especially. Yeah. All right, let's take a 5-minute break and we'll get into special revenue fund budgets. Fund budget, not fund budget.
Well, we changed it.
Yeah, I got to kill some.
Yeah.
But then people are running.
Yes.
Good job.
Yeah.
Yeah, search up to.
That's all right. Push out on the task rates box. They're still convenient.
Everybody. Oh, yeah. Yeah. That was all. What is that?
How easy for you.
I know, it's like, hey, that's the problem.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. JC, I just always like
Well, if you don't vote, you so what?
I want to sleep with. You're gonna see it. So, make sure you tell us. Oh, I haven't got, I looked at my actual. I'm working for it. So, yeah. So he really loves. Yeah. That's the question.
That's it. Everything. Yeah, we need. I've been reading so much. So, went to, so, for each river, for about the real, it's good. How much. Both sides of the aisle. It's just foreign influence. So, yes, like.
Just everything on where.
They were, well, they were talking about how, like. All the community. So I'm just like, I don't know. So that like. Foreign entities trying to sow discontent from the.
Fancy there.
Yeah.
There was conversation about that, so wait. Listen to that. So do you have one on the?
I need that, game tonight to go 47 points or more to beat Daryl. We're tied for 11 with 11.
Oh, really?
Yeah. We had the exact same picks. He's got it at 45 and I got it at 47.
Johnson.
I need a Bryce Young breakout game.
Yeah.
No,
I don't need to pay attention.
It's a matter of bringing something.
I usually will kind of eye it up and if I think I might have a chance and I'll break it down, but
It's not any different than. Yeah. Yeah. You know what? All right, so we'll
Excited.
start with special revenue fund budget items.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, council members. So this is something a little new. You're not used to seeing special revenue funds as a group. But there's changes that are happening. These funds they have their specific sources and they're legally restricted for different expenditures. So bringing them to you as a group makes sense. We've got actually a communications fund for the first time as a tax levy, for instance. So we've got 300,000 in there. The first center fund will need a general fund transfer of 71,000. So there's activity within these that affect our other funds that, and also just need council approval. So bringing them to you as a group like this is bringing awareness to the different restrictions on them. So the communications fund, as I mentioned, it's, as you well know, the revenue sources are dwindling a little bit on the cable revenue. So this is that 300,000. It's showing helping that fund out. We still have a decent fund balance of communications of 916,000. But as we go further out in the years, there's continued support unless something changes dramatically in the cable revenue. That should be an ongoing need. So with the local affordable housing aid, which is the new fund, when we just first got that money in 2024, as you remember, that all went to the county. And the projections are now that we know what's coming in, there's gonna be more money coming in for that fund. The county has, we are continuing that partnership with the county for to the tune of $250,000. There's still a portion of our money that we could use for other things and to the road, we'll bring that to you at the December 5th session. So that one is, I didn't really like lock that in because I prefer to have that discussion. So, the downtown special service district, as you're aware, we had that, public hearing for that. They said no charge for 2026. But just gives you awareness too, as to that funding balance and, that it's getting down to the 2,400 roughly at the end of 2020. The first center, as I mentioned, we go, still, we've got our capital memberships with the 4 different cities. We're not sure what we're gonna get for other preferred membership, I believe it's called.
Yep.
So the 71,000 from the general fund to help float those first year operations may or may not be needed. And then how the revenues go from the other cities.
At one point, some were talking about doing one-time payment, so that's where that whole,
Farmington was looking at front loading theirs.
Yeah, and I don't think they're in front loading.
they're not gonna do anyone.
All of the capital members do have an initiation fee.
Right.
And that's not like, the one agency that we have been retired. But they don't.
Okay.
So that's all that 71,000 is, they think that a balanced budget for the first year. And again, that's looking at the operations manager starting January 1st. Applications were accepted through today. And then the actual operations for the other part-time positions would start June 1st. So that's what's built into that budget. The opioid.
Real quick, Julie, before we move on from that, just as a reminder, that's basically half a year of revenues, because it's not going to open until June. So future years will look different than that. And also the preferred members, Brad and I were talking about that today. Timber Hills is looking at expanding into the post certification program. And so they hope to have a decision on that first quarter of the year, I think in 26. We might wait on expanding the preferred memberships because we want to be sure that if that were to come forward, that they would have enough space.
Yeah.
So that's still a little bit in flux.
So we parts on that fund. And then when we get to the opioid fund, that is such a fun word to say, and we struggle with it every time. Initially, for the 2025 budget, we had estimated that we would transfer 140,000 of the opioid money. That drug task force agent position is actually vacant for a lot of the 2025 year. So we're only going to be transferring now 24,500 from the opioid fund to the general fund. So that's a change from what we budgeted. The position is being filled and will be fully, the task force agent position will be filled in 2026. So that's what we're looking at. Like the 26 budget is $100,000 transfer from opioid to the general fund.
It's not the same that we do, though, right?
It's very unpredictable. And we just recently entered in some new ones too, and we don't know what those are going to be.
Can all the different settlements go into one fund or they one account?
They're all going into the same fund. There's just one settlement in Mackinac, I think it's called, that is they have different parameters, and it's only $9,000 that we got from that. It's still in the same fund. We just have to watch how we spend that $9,000 because the reporting is different for that one. So those are the special revenue funds in a nutshell. And like I said, Tina will be talking to you about the LAHA money, possibly use that, a big chunk of that for to somebody in the work section.
Twice.
Sorry.
These are the only special funds.
These are the only special revenue funds we have.
So I guess I was thinking that there were the microplastics settlement.
Korea,
Yeah.
that's just going in for water operating funds. So that's, and it's not, there's no reporting tied to it, but we are using it toward, the water treatment plant, those capabilities within the plant, so.
So the definition of a special fund is that there's reporting requirements specific to those dollars.
And it's legally restricted in one way or another, typically that's how they're differentiated. So,
I am convinced that the franchise will be.
So I have on your retreat agenda right now, the topic, so some cities are starting to take a little bit more of an aggressive approach due to some recent corporate events on implementing franchise fees on broadband providers. I just, that's why I'm saying it's aggressive. So, there's still some, Woodbury is one and some others are looking at it. So I just have it as a flag to talk about in January and we see if it's something to be interested.
Yeah, I'm just convinced that I was trying to.
Yeah,
identify continuous work session. And the next item, I guess, I do not.
One question about the downtown special district.
Yeah.
Who all are to be part of that? Yeah, just should. Is that just a city council decision? Does that have to be voted on by the?
no, the city council can choose to dissolve the taxing district.
Or let it maintain at zero?
Or there is a mechanism within statute that they could, I think, petition. There's a pretty high threshold, I think.
It's pretty high.
Yeah, once
And there's
it's
enough, we own enough property. To us. But the last, I was in a meeting, but the last conversation amongst BLDA folks was, I think this year's holiday on Main is going to rejuvenate some folks, and then next year they may. For the second.
And we've given them some estimates on what different assessments would be per parcel. So, if they were to do a $10,000 budget, what would it cost Ace Hardware and Bears? So we've given them different scenarios for that.
Does there need to be the assessment of which parcels are included in that? Or is that all inclusive of downtown?
No, there's a specific map that shows which parcels are included.
That's part of the problem or?
There's some that don't feel like that they get the benefit of it, but they were established as part of it. And, you would have to, I think, act to change that, but then that would change the allocation for the rest of them to do that.
I know it's still covered through Somerville, but.
We're going to the last item, we have a 2025 year review and the final 2026 budget review. Nation in the packet, I'll highlight any changes. We do have some for 2025 year-end documents, increases in revenues that were positive. So roughly 200,000 in the combination of fire and police stated. The safer grant will bring in 377,000 more. License and permits are coming in high, which is great, about 210,000. And charges for services are up as well, up 820,000. So the 2025 revenue projections are better. What I'm showing in the little chart where it's showing the adopted budget for 25 and then year-end estimates, no set transfers out of 1.85. That is sitting in the fund balance right now. We have it as a designated fund balance that it was the 2023 public safety. So, and so we transferred that out of the general fund. It went toward the one and purchase of the price 55. And then as we're looking at how we were able to change our 2026 revenues, well, I'll step back for just a second. So our variance is still a positive variance of our fund balance. Change. roughly 545,000 to the good. So that's how we're shooting for 2025. Looking at 2026 revenues, we were able to reduce the levy amount by 200,000. And the things that helped us be able to do that was the increase in the fire relief aid, the 9% that you just heard about tonight, so about 74,000. Our police aid is estimated to come in roughly 100,000 more than what we originally budgeted. And then the fire relief aid, this is the portion they would keep, was up 143,000, and notice in the chart below for expenditures, the expenditures also increased by that 142,000. So it's an in and out for that fire relief portion. We have our fiscal agent fees for Dakota 911 and arenas. Part of the $57,000 increase is some rate calculations that needed to be fixed, and then there's a slight increase in Dakota 911's fees that their board is looking for their approval at the next board meeting. It's put in here, assuming that they will approve it. And we just bumped up some revenue projections then to the license implements, investment income, and then the miscellaneous, mostly of that 81,470 with some antenna revenue. T-Mobile thought they owed us less money by taking credits, and they actually owe us more money, and so we're anticipating that will come in 2026. So.
Can I just backtrack one second?
Sure.
So it says, one of the major drivers for levy for 27 is climate control. We want to have a conversation about bonding.
Yeah,
I mean, I think,
not just bonding, but other sources as well.
yeah, I mean, I know that we want to be supportive of the 35 to 50 project, but I still think that.
And then there were just some minor changes on the expenditure side in year 2026 from what we saw in September, and those were included in the chart below. So the preliminary expenditures were at 46,400, 46,400,000, and then we're ending up at 46,500,000 for those expenditure changes. Which is based then on where we're at with the property tax levy. So originally in September with the levy, we were proposing then it was a 7% increase over last year. Now with these changes, it comes down to 6.42% levy increase. And broke down a lot of, 1.2 million of our levy increase is for the general fund, but we had some big jumps. We had a $1 million increase in the building fund, 350,000 increase for the pavement management, 400,000 for the equipment fund, 550,000 for the park and trail improvement, and then that first time levy for the communications of 300,000. And we did have some savings, our debt, the debt that's falling off, roughly 628,000. So that's nice, and we'll enjoy that as the park bond levies are now plateauing. We're not adding any more park bonds, so that's partly the reason why the debt levy is now starting to show that reduction. So what that leaves us with our tax capacity rate for 2025 was 32.7, and now we're up to 33% for 2026. And that chart that you see with the preliminary tax capacity rates, we are still quite a bit lower than all of our other Dakota cities, and so we're still winning on that front.
What's your level of confidence on that chart? I mean,
Those are all based on the proposed levies, so they could bring their levies down, but all that affects it all change if their market valuations change. They could flow, but usually they don't change a lot from this unless somebody really, I'm confident that we're still going to be the lowest.
oh yeah,
And ours is going to be the 0.33.
Sure. 7%.
I know, it's so. And then as we're looking at the impact to the median value home, which our median value home now is 467,000. The annual city taxes will increase $75. $12 of that increases from the levy, and $63 of that increases the actual assessed market value. For our commercial properties, if we're looking at a $1 million property, the existing commercial property saw an increase in market value of 14%, so a large jump in their market valuation. So of their annual increase of $977, 924 of that was from the market value going up.
And I wasn't in the presentation from the county or the extension road. Are they feeling that the commercial's now catching back up to pre-COVID levels, or that it took such a decline in valuation?
Yeah, I don't remember them talking about that in particular. I think it's, that's part of it.
Yeah.
You know, it's just based on comparable sales and,
Okay.
Maybe some expansions, I'm not sure if there's any
yeah.
existing businesses that would be add-ons, expansions. So yeah, from the preliminary till now, our projected tax rate we thought was going to be 33.15. Back in September, now we're down to about 43.0%. So slight decrease, which we'll get there. So, and then we just laid out in the packet, the fund, general fund summary, we want to point out, which I think is on page 8 of the PDF. The transfer out in the 2026, it says final, that is missing the 71,000 for the first center. So that will be adopted in the adopted budget, that 71,000 transfer out for the general fund. So, and then just pointing out too, if you looking at the sources and uses for the capital project funds, that's to give you an idea of how the fund balances are doing each of those capital different funds. It shows the tax levies needed going out in these years ahead. When you're looking at the equipment fund on their page, still we've got a tax levy of 400,000, but the liquor fund contribution for 2026 is 9.5 million. Liquor fund is anticipating contributing another 1.2 million in 2027. So the liquor fund is being able to help keep that levy low. Parking trail improvement, and that's where, and as we're talking about climate retaining wall. So right now in 2026, we're levying 1.5 million for the parking trail improvement. That is estimated to go up to 2.9 if that retaining wall is in place. If we don't have other funding sources. So just a point of interest too, as we were talking with our insurance agent for renewal, retaining walls can be covered in our policy plans. We're trying to give them that information. I'm not sure what that means exactly, because we're just learning this like last week. So retaining walls can be covered, but I don't know what it means if it's only for retaining walls hit or I'm not sure. So that's, I just wanted to give you those sources and uses of those funds that I'm using or that are getting tax levy support. Are there any questions on those capital? Total by
9%.
That's the 74,250.
It's the 30% accounted for.
The 30% is out 2 years out, yeah. But it doesn't show on any because we don't do multi-year budgeting. It is, we will be factoring in for the 2027, it's 9% again.
Yeah. I'm just looking at the property tax levy, tax capacity, and tax rate sheet, and the tax levy estimates at the 2033, and those projections at 30%.
We don't per se, but these again are usually projections of, a 4% increase in the general fund expenditures. So, and with building permit revenues, development, those could all help reduce how much we need to levy. But still, it's still looking positive. But again, 2027 would be a good year. We have to do all of that levy.
Just a reminder, that next year always looks big.
Forever good.
Yep, and we always work it down. So, not to say it's not concerning. We do have some things we need to work on. But I don't believe we'd be coming to you as a 14% budget increase next year.
Finance, ready?
I think this is a really good setup.
Our financial sustainability policy, where we're at, checks all the boxes that are concerns or negative trends.
I know we're confident that the policy goal will be met. That's right within the deviate out of that.
I'm trying to remember one other thing in terms of just balance between our commercial, industrial, and residential taxpayers. You know, the commercial saw the biggest increase. Is there an ideal balance, and how do you really work through that? If there is a perfect number, what's the perfect balance of those three areas? I mean, we can't control the businesses that choose to come here, but we can control zoning and planning. And so, as we go into this next comprehensive plan cycle, are there adjustments from an economic standpoint does that make sense? I know I'm not looking for an answer, but is there insight into that as we even look at?
So I think some of us should look at conversation then.
Yeah, that will change some with economic conditions and what the bias, so I think it makes a lot of sense to look at you know, see this. Each day is first. So you can find a pretty good system. Definitely.
Feel free to
Other comments? Items today, items for future discussion. Okay. Committees, administrative updates.
It's not, since it was kind of our inaugural one for council members to go. I think we could talk about more at the retreat, I think, but that was a great experience. Claire, good topical, that's handouts here about some of the stability discussion, I think are really important. Something and some of this stuff. The index thing was the big one that got the speech on just how people engage with government and then there were some really good topics and sessions that I went to. I think the ones that stood out was the America 250 thing that I've talked to a number of you about it. There's a lot of community planning and other community about this and discussion about that. Topic of the world today, data centers. Some really good discussion, some some communities that have a lot of data center discussion, which leads me to believe that maybe that's something we need to give some thought to some ordinance. Some preemptive ordinance discussions on some of those topics too. Other than that, I think, John, I don't know what other thoughts you have. I thought it was worthwhile. I was proud that we did not have a quorum there. Yeah, some communities take great pride and some as many people as never Delta can hold, and we were very fiscally responsible.
No,
Valuable.
yeah, I mean, I would agree. You know, you go to these conferences and I thought the topical information you were presenting was relevant and they really covered it well. What I liked about it was they did it mostly in the table format, where other cities said that this. You know, they talked about their experiences and provided lots of documentation. So, there were quite a few, but the people that I think they take a look. They're just some of the issues that piece of content. Yeah, definitely.
It's too short notice that conversation. America 250. That was something.
The America 250 one we could probably do pretty easily. The data center one might take some more time to pull the stuff together. But if you'd like to, we can add that to the December website.
And data center thing might be us having a conversation and say, this is what we should spend some time this week.
Yeah, the one thing, the one specific item that they mentioned was, I think it was Tucson. Yeah, the one big word of advice was make sure you have a mega water user provision in your thing, which, you know, despite the fact that the trends have kind of changed on it. That was the thing that clicked with me, that just better to be dealing with this in the abstract, preparing rather than having to react to an actual plan or proposal. You know, but data centers in Arizona. Yeah, they have water. They don't. They do. They do. Yeah, it must be the desert. Anything else?
Yeah, most of my work time has been like the relief. It's a really important role. So, we're
Delicate balance.
state aid. At the end of the day, I was happy with the pension because we went, Julie and I were at the Q&A last week and some tough questions were asked by members and the pension board, our relief board, responded with confidence on those answers and didn't really refer to us too much except to support the numbers that they were saying. So I just think, you know, a lot of that work takes time and trust, and so everyone really this flat. So thanks for the support and helping move that forward.
This is not an official city thing, committee, but the city will be giving insurance. Get from the Hossie family and the press Bob's grandparent. Take a motion to adjourn. Second? Second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?